Oh my god, I might get in the hot water for this. Maha.com, what I wish I knew before becoming a doctor.
I just got my residency diploma in the mail, and I finally can sit down and frame all of my diplomas, which is about $1 million of education.
Wait, why $1 million of education? As med school each year is like 50 to 80K times 4. College is less than that times 4. $500,000 in education?
My father gave me a small loan of $1 million.
What it took to get here, the reality of becoming a doctor in the United States from beginning to end. So this is my medical residency diploma. I worked hard, and this is my medical school. This is my undergrad diploma. So I have this frame and I have this frame. When you decide that you want to be a doctor in the United States, you have to take certain prerequisites in your undergrad and you have to score really high on them. So you have to have a specific GPA to even be like considered.
And we talk about those GPA and MCAT cutoffs on the Med School Insider channel, and based on the program, MDs have higher cutoffs, DO have lower cutoffs. Caribbean don't really have much of a cutoff. And then of course the pros and cons of going each route.
And you take these courses and you do really well on them. You study your butt off, you do really well on them. And then you have to take the MCAT. The MCAT is like the first standardized test that you're gonna take, and that's for medical school admissions. At that point, the hardest exam that you're ever gonna take.
The MCAT is the medical college admissions test, and it's the big standardized test that you have to take to get into med school. It's the one big test that people spend 3 to 6+ months studying for. They spend a lot of time and effort pouring over this because it is the one test that has the greatest weight over your competitiveness as a medical school candidate.
You have to score really, really high on it. Some people study for 6 months to be able to score it that high. Study your butt off, you take the MCAT, you stressed out, and you get the score that you wanted. You get the score that people say, like, this score is high enough to get into med school.
Which again is going to depend on what kind of school you're trying to go to. So the average, I think, for MDs is around 512, which is a 90th percentile or like an 88th percentile score. Very high. DO schools are going to be quite a bit lower. But then even when you're going within DOs or within MDs, there's a range, right? Getting into Harvard, which is an MD school, is going to be on average, a higher MCAT score versus getting into a local state school that's probably less prestigious, where you would still need a reasonable MCAT score, but not quite as high.
You now go to apply to med school, but every single person that applied to med school also had the same thing. So you have to do stuff that's going to set you apart from them.
Extracurriculars, research is a big one that helps people stand out quite a bit.
There are literally Olympic medalists applying alongside you to get into med school to be a doctor in the US. There are very limited spots.
Yeah, we had that at my school too. The more common things would be, you pursue your interests. For me, on my application, things that interviewers love talking about was my involvement on a dance team. Also, I had done some amount of research, not a ton, but enough that it was interesting and people wanted to talk about it. If you are able to publish a lot of papers or a lot of presentations or abstracts, then that does make you a much more competitive candidate because schools love to see that. That means that when you go and become a med student there, you'll continue publishing, and that's good for the school. And we explain how to do that in our ultimate research course linked below.
And usually these schools are like $50,000 to $60,000 to $70,000 a year just for tuition. Not only is it that you have to take out loans to afford that, you also have to like pay for rent and like food, and like you also have to like survive as a human. And med school is a full-time job. I know like maybe one person in my life who actually was able to like hold another job during med school. I think I studied on average like 12 to 15 hours a day just to stay afloat, like not even to like get high scores, just to like stay not failing.
I will say that you probably don't have to study 12 to 15 hours a day just to get by. What most people find is that the way that they studied in college isn't the way that they should be studying in medical school. That was the case for me and for most of my classmates. And then once you do learn how to study properly, you'll use slightly more uncomfortable but highly more effective study methods, active study techniques, which we cover on our Med School Insider Study playlist. Goes through every single one, how to use it, mistakes, etc. And that allows you to study in far less time, retain a lot more information, and then have time to sleep and do your other exercise and have fun with friends and whatever you want to do. But studying 12 to 15 hours per day is just not sustainable. And you're going to have sprints like that as you're preparing for USMLE STEP, which is like the big, for pre-meds, MCAT's the big test. When you get to med school, step 1 and step 2 are the big tests. There's 2 big standardized tests. Those are the times where you're going to be studying super, super hard. But apart from that, you shouldn't be studying 12 to 15 hours per day. And even during STEP, studying 15 hours is definitely excessive. I would say 10 to 12 is on the upper end of what's needed, even to be a top candidate, because if you start going more than that, you'll have these diminishing returns, which will actually harm your performance because now you can't recover, you can't consolidate that information because you're not sleeping enough, et cetera, et cetera.
Doing the research that they told you to do the research in. Take step 1 and step 2, which step 1 and step 2 are the hardest exams, I think, in the world, I think they say. So you have to take these exams and not only pass them, but you have to score high enough to be able to be considered for the specialty of your choosing. Do you want to be a surgeon, OBGYN, family doctor, a dermatologist? What do you want to do? And then what other requirements come with that? Because every single specialty has different requirements.
And if you don't know the specialty that you want to do, that's fine, that's normal. The majority, based on a new survey from the AAMC, 3/4 of students, when they enter med school, change their mind about their intended specialty by the time they graduate. So you may go in as a pre-med thinking you want to be a neurosurgeon, which is a very common thing. And then when you graduate, now you realize you want to do family medicine or internal medicine instead. Very common. Don't be too rigid in your specialty choice, especially if you're not in your final 2 years of med school, which is when most people get the clarity and the exposure to figure out what they want to do.
Just because you graduate medical school doesn't mean you can be a practicing physician in the country. You have to then get training in whatever specialty it is that you choose. And that training is anywhere from 3 to like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, so all residencies in the US for any board certified specialty are going to be 3 to 7 years, depending on the specialty. Neurosurgery is the longest at 7 years. I was in plastic surgery, which is 6 years. Internal medicine is 3 years. And other things are somewhere in the middle. Now, certain specialties and certain specialists have to do a fellowship. So to become a cardiologist, you do 3 years of internal medicine residency and then 3 years of cardiology fellowship for a total of 6 years after medical school.
You do all these things and then you're like, cool, like I did it. And then you have to apply to the match. The match is this like system where you have to pay again. You're still not making money, but you have to pay to be able to apply to these programs and interview at them, and spending like months preparing and researching and doing all the things that you need to do to set yourself up for success during the interviews. And then sometime in the beginning of that year, you have to submit a list of programs that you can see yourself in from like 1 to 60. And when you submit this list, you are pretty much saying, if they match me in any of these places, I'm going to go there. It's a binding agreement.
Now, when you apply to medical school, you get multiple interviews, you get multiple acceptances. You can hold on to those acceptances and then make your decision, I think, around April. Whereas when it comes to residency, there's this algorithm where you can interview at a lot of places, but you don't get multiple acceptances. You match at a certain institution and you rank your programs in order of preference. Programs are the same for the various candidates that they interview, and then there's an algorithm that matches. Depending on how competitive your specialty is, depending on how many programs you choose to apply to, that's going to change the number of programs that you do interview at and rank. And you got to be careful, because if you rank a program that you would not ever want to actually attend, but the algorithm ends up matching you there because your top choices were filled by other candidates, then you got to go there. So it's a very stressful process. The match algorithm it has a lot of upsides. It does have some downsides. We have a whole video explaining how it works over on Med School Insiders, but it is a very stress-inducing, nerve-wracking process.
And you are just waiting for that day in March where you get an email that holds your fate. So on a random Monday in March, you get an email that says either congratulations, you have matched, or we're sorry, you did not match. It doesn't tell you where you match. It doesn't tell you any more details. That's all it tells you. And then you have to wait like 4 days to find out where you're going. For the people that get the email that's like, congratulations, you have matched, great. You're just like hoping and dreaming that you got your number 1 spot. I personally was like in debilitating fear that entire week because I was like playing mind games with myself. I was like, what if none of the places I interviewed at want me? And like, what if I get nothing? Or what if I get my like last choice? And what is that going to mean for my life? And like, I already started looking at apartments. Like it's like real life. Like it's not just a small thing.
And that happens. It happens. And you got to remember that people go through that every year. And even though it's scary and even though it's stressful, you will be okay. You may end up going to a program that you didn't really want to, but you knew that you needed to put it there just in case. And now you're in a state that you've never been to, that you have no interest in being in, but there's a silver lining. And you can be the author of your own story to then find value in that, to say, I was meant to be here to learn X, Y, and Z, whatever learning opportunities, yada, yada, and then come back a better future doctor. And same thing if you go unmatched. And by the way, many students who go unmatched, they actually come to medschoolinsiders.com and we help them out. And during that process, you're troubleshooting and figuring out what went wrong the first time, what can you learn from it, how are you going to spend the next year, and then set yourself up for success the subsequent year.
What happens to the residents that get an email that says, we're sorry you did not match? I honestly wish I didn't know, because it's crazy. If you get an email that says, we're sorry you did not match, then for that remainder of that week, you are going through something called the SOAP, or some people call it the scramble, because it is literally just scrambling for your life, honestly.
It used to be called the Scramble. They got renamed to SOAP, which stands for Supplemental Offer and Acceptance Program.
And during that time, every single med student, that didn't match, and every single program that didn't fill all of their spots, interview each other. So you have the choice of like, do you want to try again for the same specialty, or do you think your odds are low enough that you don't want to go for that specialty anymore? Some people might say like, okay, well, I know I'm not going to get the specialty that I wanted. And so some people decide to like scrap that entire year and like not match that year and try again the year after, which, if you can imagine, would feel pretty shitty.
Well, the idea being SOAP is it's only for that week. So if there are open positions, you try to jump into one of those open positions if you can, right? So I actually knew a buddy this last year who applied to neurosurgery, didn't match, soaked into an emergency medicine position instead, which was like his backup specialty that he was considering. And then a couple months later, a neurosurgery position opened up, and then he left the emergency medicine position, then was able to secure that neurosurgery position. And now he is a PGY1 in neurosurgery, and things worked out. But then there are other people who can't soap into anything, or they say, hey, I don't want to do EM, I want to do only neurosurgery. And then they will work on improving their application so they can apply in a subsequent year, or even the year after that, as a stronger candidate to improve their odds of matching into neurosurgery and not having to soap.
And then you go through these rounds. Let me show you this really quick. Okay, that's cute. So this is number one. That actually, look at this border. That looks really good, right? You go through these rounds of interviews, and it is like cold calling you. So you will get a phone call that says like, hey, we saw your application. Are you free to interview in like 5 minutes? So then you have to like run and put on a suit or whatever it is and look presentable and like remember what this program is, because remember, like, you didn't initially apply to this program, you just heard of them this week. So then you get on this call, and like it's really just like is something that you can see yourself doing. So you interview, and who knows how many interviews you get. So this is the week, remember, this is still the week that everyone around you is celebrating because they already matched. And now you are waiting to hear back from like results of first round. And so the way that this works is you log onto the computer, and they say that they're gonna release offers at like 10 a.m., for example. And then from 10 a.m., you have 2 hours to either accept or deny that offer. If you accept that offer, it's over. You matched, you are going to this place, it's binding, it's over. If you decide not to accept that offer disappears forever. And too late, too bad. So like imagine, okay? And I also feel like my friends or colleagues that went through this, like, were not prepared at all and felt so alone and felt crazy. And I like wanna like get this information out there so people know what this part is like. In the end, some people matched through this process, and I think last year, 2,000 fully qualified physicians did not match.
Now I'm wondering what number is US graduates, MDs, US graduates, DOs, and then international candidates, because US MDs match at a rate, US MDs and DOs match at a very high rate of about, changes every year to year, but like something like 96, 97% roughly. International candidates have much lower match rates.
And we're left without a job. That's the reality for a lot of like non-US graduates when they want to do residency in the US. I imagine like if I were the one who soaped in the middle of nowhere and I didn't have anyone with me, if you like had to move far away from all of your support system, I don't know, I have a really hard time thinking that this is the reality for a lot of people. And I like feel really sad because these are some really smart people who like are really passionate about helping others, and that's how the system plays out.
Smart and hardworking. It's tough, but people get through it.
So now, congratulations, you got through all of that. You went to school and you got through board exams and you matched into residency and you have like 2 months until July 1st when you start finally being able to call yourself doctor. Then you get this schedule and you realize that you're gonna be working the most insane hours that you've ever seen in your life. You're working 16-hour days. You're now doing something called call days where you're working 28 hours straight, and like, no, you don't get to sleep during those 28 hours.
Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It depends on how busy call is. But generally the idea is that between consults, you should try to sleep. There are times, I've had call nights where, I don't sleep for 32, 33 hours because it's just nonstop triple call. You know, you're on face trauma call, you're on plastic surgery call, you're on hand trauma call. Those are crazy weeks. But again, depending on your specialty, depending on just that given day, depending on the hospital, all these other factors, don't think that you're going to regularly have to go without sleep. Unless you're in neurosurgery, then you're fucked.
When you do the math of how much you're getting paid versus how many hours you're working, you realize that you were getting paid more at 16 years old at minimum wage as a Rite Aid cashier. No, I felt like I was being played.
Yeah, we actually talk about the whole, we're talking about the math of resident salaries, and the hours vary by specialty. So there's a Med School Insiders channel video talking about that, breaking it down with actual math and taxes and states and all that stuff.
The things that you have to do now are, for me personally, I never thought it would be that bad. So like, as an example, like I was the person responsible for sharing a terminal cancer diagnosis to a young person in the hospital. You're the one doing the death exam. You're the one struggling, hear these really sad stories for your patients. A lot of them stem from like the way the healthcare system is and the inequities in the healthcare system. And a lot of times like you can't really do anything about it. So a lot of times it's limited by so many things that are out of your control. And you just have to get through it because you worked this hard to become a doctor. And this is what you dreamed of your entire life. And so you just have to keep going. No matter how bad it is or no matter how depressed you are, you just have to keep going.
There are going to be ups and downs in residency. That's why our support system is very important, and why it's extra sad when people go to programs very far away from their support systems. But there are definitely ways to make it more or less manageable. And there are certainly ups and downs to it. There are going to be months that are amazing. You're like, I love this job. I love this career. And then there are other months where you're like, oh my God, why did I choose this? This is really challenging. I can't even sleep. I can't even find the time to sleep. And I'm just constantly exhausted. And that definitely plays into your mental health and how you're feeling day to day. But ups and downs are normal in medical training. Unfortunately, downs are a bit more common than they should be in the profession based on some systemic issues, which we've discussed in other videos. But just know that going in. Nice. Cooper Medical School. Awesome. I think that's a program out in New Jersey. I have my diplomas for both college and med school, and I think they're in a drawer back at my mom's house. I don't think I ever framed them, but this is making me think that maybe I should frame it and put it somewhere in my office.
You're working impossible hours. You don't have time at the end of the day. You have to choose between sleep or eat, pretty much. You have to remember too, at the same time that you are in the hospital and just like counting down the days until it's over, you're like seeing a lot of your family and friends move on.
I don't want it to sound all doom and gloom, like counting the days down until things are over. Just keep in mind, again, there are going to be ups and downs. Some people enjoy residency more than others, based on the specialty you choose, based on the program you're at, based on a lot of factors. You may enjoy it more or less. You don't have to be miserable by any means. Actually, look at some of our other reaction videos with Sean Anderson, and we highlight some of the things that he's doing that make him seem to be enjoying the residency process a lot more than some others.
You're like seeing a lot of your family and friends move on. Like you're seeing a lot of people like get new jobs or get promotions, get married, have kids, go on these vacations, do all the things that you like would think your like late 20s, early 30s would be for.
True. And you're going to feel that even well before residency. You're going to feel that as soon as you start medical school, that people are taking these paths and are getting ahead in life and you're stuck behind. But you chose a different life path, and there are pros and cons of that. Know that going in. The benefit of this path is that hopefully you enjoy it. You get a lot of meaning from it. Sure, you're going to have lows, and you're not going to be able to buy your home or go on these vacations as early as some of your friends in other fields. But once you finish your training and you're an attending physician, you'll be making a very healthy income that will allow you to pay down your loans relatively fast, and is probably higher than your friends in other fields, which then will allow you to live a great lifestyle moving forward. But yeah, you have to suffer in your 20s and some into your early 30s before you get there. It is a trade-off.
But you're just stuck, and you just have to like continue to like take the beating that is residency. This is where I'm at now. So I finished residency, right?
I wonder what specialty she did. She was at University of Pennsylvania for residency, but I'm not sure what specialty she was in.
Now is supposed to be the time that you are gonna make the money, and you're gonna have time again and have a normal schedule and finally be able to do the things that you wanted to do when you decided to go to med school. I am now 2 months out of residency. I haven't started working yet. I'm still looking for a job that like is the perfect fit for me. And I'm just so tired, and I keep asking myself, was it worth it? Was all of it like worth it in the end? And I don't think I have the answer for that yet, to be honest. I feel like everything I worked for, I haven't done yet. Like, sure, I had some great days in residency where I could feel that I was making a difference, and I could feel like I was like helping a lot of people, but like those days were not often. This is $280,000. So far we're at 280,000, 300,000, and then residency. Like, I did get paid during residency, but like when you think about like how much you should have been getting paid, you're looking at like a $200,000 a year deficit.
Okay, I don't agree with the $200,000 deficit. In residency, you're getting paid on average $60,000 to $65,000 these days. So to argue that you should be getting paid $260,000 to $265,000 per year as a PGY 1, 2, and 3 resident, I would disagree with. I think residents should be paid more, and they should be probably paid in line with mid-levels, NPs and PAs, which is going to be like low 100s, around 95, 110, something like that. So I wouldn't really say that it's a $600,000 deficit in residency. And the fact is, again, you're making money. You should be paid more, but you're making money. In reality, she paid money for med school. She paid money for undergrad. And hopefully she got some scholarships and such to reduce her loan burden, which, of course, we discussed the strategies on how to do that over on the Med School Insiders channel. But I wouldn't count residency into the cost there.
And that was 3 years. That's $600,000. So this is over $1 million of education.
Yeah, it's not over $1 million.
But this is us. I'm hopefully going to be signing a job where I finally am gonna do what I always wanted to do. And hopefully I start this job and I start making some real money and I start like seeing patients, being able to share all of these tools in my toolbox that I like grabbed over the years to like help them be healthier physically and mentally. And that's when it'll be worth it.
So big congrats to Maha for finishing that huge journey, which is medical training. 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, and 3 years of residency. Sounds like she may have done internal medicine or family medicine, something like that. That's something to be proud of, and I hope that she feels less burnt out moving forward now that she is done with residency. Sounds like residency was very challenging. In these reaction videos, it's always so tough because I'm trying to find the balance between giving you guys value and also being very sensitive about how I say things. So here we go. I'm going to do my best. I think students who are struggling a lot in college and in medical school, there's not a very clear correlation, but there is definitely a correlation that they tend to be less happy in the medical training field, especially during med school and residency, because it is much more rigorous than college. So that isn't to say students who are not doing well in college cannot then do well in college, in med school and in residency, but there is a correlation there. The best predictor of your STEP performance, which is, again, the big standardized exam in med school, is your MCAT performance. That's the number one best predictor based on the literature. And I think it has less to do with intelligence and a lot more to do with your study strategies and how you approach things. I believe that any student can become an A student, but they need to let go of their old ways of doing things. If they feel like, oh,
I study better this way, I feel like this is my study style.
It feels comfortable, I get it, I've been there, but the fact is that that's not true. It's nonsense. There is a scientifically more effective and less effective way to study, and most people use the less effective ways to study. So you shouldn't be spending 12 to 15 hours per day studying in medical school. And if you instead approach things differently, don't just reread your lecture notes and rewatch lecture. Like, there were so many things I saw in college, especially from classmates, that just were so silly and backwards and such a poor use of time. But if you start doing spaced repetition with active recall, practice questions, condensing summary sheets by yourself, Feynman technique, teaching other people, your friends and such in your small group sessions, those are all way, way, way more effective. And it's okay for learning to be messy. When I was in college, I liked things being very organized. I wanted to go through every lecture twice and maybe the hard ones 3 times, but I wanted to go through all lectures at least once. And you got to let go of that rigidity and trying to be overly organized and embrace the messiness of effective learning. You're going to be a lot better off both in med school and residency, and very much so as a pre-med in college. I very much feel like if I studied the way I did in med school back in college, I would have had so much more time for other things in college. But I didn't. I definitely had room for improvement with my study strategies, and as a result, I spent a lot of time studying in college. And that's actually the first video I ever made on the Med School Insiders channel. It's how to study effectively, what I wish I knew as a pre-med before med school or something like that. And that goes over everything I knew. We remade that video into Study Less, Study Smart. Well, that one really popped off. And people accused me of like copying Ali Abdaal.
Oh, you copied Ali Abdaal.
Which is funny because it was actually just a remake of that first ever video that I made. It was just such a valuable, dense video that I'm very proud of. And I think that if you guys watch that, you're going to know literally 80% of everything you need to know about how to approach studying the right way. But if I'm being honest, this is probably going to get me into some hot water. One of the primary drivers of why I wanted to start the Med School Insiders YouTube channel back in 2016 was because I felt that there was a lot of misinformation on YouTube about how to study, and there were some other content creators at the time who were sharing how they studied and what they recommended. They had the best intentions, but what I found to be less helpful to you, the viewer, the student, is that this, it may have been a student who didn't have the best study strategies. Maybe they weren't doing as well in school as they would like, but they were telling you how to study. So if this not optimally performing student is telling you how to study, you're not going to be an optimal performer. And then I felt, as someone who was seeing some of these videos, that, hey, I would do things totally different, and I think this is actually not helpful advice. This is actually damaging to a lot of pre-meds and early med students who are trying to figure out how to study better. And that's why the first ever video was that, and many of our videos have focused around study strategies. I see here on Maha's channel, she does have a lot of study strategy videos. I haven't watched any of them, but I would just suggest that you don't have to study 12 to 15 hours per day to get through med school and to just stay afloat. If you're studying 8 to 10 to 12 hours per day in med school, you should be at the top of your class. And if you're studying more than that and getting worse results, it's probably because you're not approaching things as optimally as you can. And it's not about how intelligent you are, it's just about how you are choosing to study. Anyway, my friends, let me know your thoughts with the comment below. Much love. See you in the next one.